Hello, I'm Daniel Frankel, co-founder of NextTMT. You're joining us today for our special midweek issue. Well, it's not special. It's every week now. Our midweek issue, we have a guest who is special, Robert Rose of Artist and Idea Management, AIM TV Group, I think it's called, right? You'll correct me.
Yeah, it's the DBA. Yeah, to make it simple. Yeah, because we don't manage artists unless you consider me one. But yeah, AIM TV Group, aka AIM TV, just for short.
Rob, you've been an advisor to NextTMT since the start. We'll confide that.
Yeah.
Friend of the show, friend of the business. But beyond that, a media entrepreneur who's been in broadcast and television for over 20 years. And you've seen some troubles and some changes and some successes along the way. You're an interesting guy to talk to in regard to the state of the business, the consolidation, the fragmentation of viewership, the struggle as it might be. And, well, first, we're politically aligned. I think that's if anybody knows us, that's no secret. We express that on our LinkedIn and various social channels a lot. I don't know if you were watching Rand Paul grill Mark Wayne Mullen in Senate hearings today. That was entertaining.
When I'm cheering for Rand Paul, it's a weird world. And I found myself cheering for some weird people, but it is what it is. It's upside down world and I'm getting used to it. And I've been listening to punk rock music for the last 20 years, almost every day every day of my life. And it's all about outsider status, holding true to your ethics and morals, which is what I really find. I love punk music because it's kind of angry and I'm always a little bit angry, but it has.
So is Mark Wayne.
Huh?
So is Mark Wayne Mullen. He's kind of pissed off.
Yeah. I mean, but there's anger. There's performative anger, which I see a lot happening when these guys testify. And then there's anger that is from a righteous place. And I see bucolic anger as well, people who are falsely just trying to bully other people. And I never want to be the bully. I want to be the guy taking up for the person who is getting bullied. And
Right.
I guess you would call me woke. And I'm like, hey, man, that beats the whatever the other person is doing, because I don't think empathy.
You could be the Tom Berenger, or you could be the Willem Dafoe. You choose to be the Dafoe.
Right.
You ain't no firing squad, you piece of. I sound like my colleague David Bloom, who's not here today. He's out on assignment for Forbes or somewhere.
Okay.
So let's talk about your career, your trajectory. You started, I think, 25 years ago. You're selling ads for Univision.
Well, yeah, I started selling locally in Nashville, Tennessee, where I'm from. Tennessee is where I'm from, and Nashville was the closest DMA to where I grew up. And so I began as a newspaper, then radio, and then TV is where I kind of bloomed, I guess, in ad sales. And I became a national sales manager, and that brought me to New York. And I was in my 20s and I fell in love with New York. So I moved to New York. That's when I began selling for Univision, and the whole world just kind of opened up to me when I moved to New York City from a career point of view, which was why I really wanted to move here, but also from a personal fulfillment point of view, which in a way led me to first producing and syndicating, when you and I met, a Latin television show in English.
Latino.
American Latino, right. And it was crazy successful. Looking back, I didn't realize it at the time how successful it was.
So this is the early aughts, and forgive me for interrupting you, but
yeah,
it tends to happen here. And you're basically in the weekly syndication market. And describe, a startup can come in with some connections and make it go. It's a vital market at this time, or ebbing, but still.
I had very few connections at that time. So it was really just the idea of targeting Hispanics who were at the time really underserved on television, but the market was exploding. Univision was making a lot of money. I just took research that actually I found at Univision and used it against them because they were only telling part of the story. So I went out and told the rest of the story. And, it wasn't, I'm simplifying it for time, but basically it was very difficult. I didn't want to really be an entrepreneur. I was a reluctant entrepreneur. I think I've talked to you about that as you became and launched NextTMT. I said, you get in a situation where you have to do it. And for me, I didn't have to do it. I had a good job, but the research was so overwhelming that I was like, someone's got to do this. And I was like, well, someone else will do this. And then I was like,
you had demographics, very not typical, but a pattern here. A younger children of first generation immigrants who were somewhat Americanized, spoke both Spanish and English and had different tastes than their parents. And that wasn't being addressed. Is that kind of where it was going?
Yes. So they were ignored by the English language media. And then on Spanish language TV, they were also ignored because they were really doing novellas and soccer, not the experience of second and third generation Latinos, which made up the majority of the Latin market. And so I called it the untapped majority, because what Univision was doing was making several $billion a year trying to represent all Latinos on an advertising point of view. But from an actual programming point of view, they were only reaching a third of the market, the first generation Spanish language, mainly speaking demographic. So, back in the day when you could get a meeting, and, it was really great for me, Dan, because I was selling locally for Univision. And then suddenly I was having entree into global marketing people at McDonald's, Volkswagen, the highest level, State Farm Insurance, all these levels. They wanted to talk to me, or I was able to get in because of Univision's success, because of their desire to tap the Hispanic market.
Right.
And again, it was research based. And that kind of got I guess I learned to be an entrepreneur. I learned how the lessons of being an independent producer, obviously learned how to syndicate, learn how to produce, learn how to sell advertising, which I'd already known, but now I was doing it at a much larger level. But it gave me that fighting spirit that you need in order to succeed in this business, because there's always someone who's going to try to keep you from succeeding. And in my case, it was Univision. They would literally follow me or send someone to conferences where I'd be speaking and try to trip me up. But they could not trip me up because I had the research down and I had truth and facts on my side.
And once you start speaking to these really high level managers of global brands,
Right.
your research only gets augmented because you're learning what they know and adding to the theory, right? I mean, is that how it
Yeah.
works?
And I mean, people in the Hispanic market weren't supportive of me. Those Hispanic ad agencies, by and large, were afraid of that if they found out that Latinos spoke English, which they were speaking English in our meetings,
Yeah.
that they would suddenly lose their, the goose that laid the golden egg for them. They just wanted it to be this big mystery that only they could do. And here's this gringo from Tennessee coming in and saying, no, this is how it is. I was an outsider. I was not Latino, but anybody who talked to me, especially the young Latinos that I gathered around me at the company for the production side of things, knew that I knew my stuff because I lived it. I breathed it. I was less emotionally attached to being a Puerto Rican or a Mexican or a Guatemalan. I was able to see it from enough of a detached perspective to make some headway. And I also got the comfort level of general managers at TV stations who knew nothing about the Latin market, who would let their guard down a little bit and talk to me, sometimes in disturbing ways. I can name a couple of things. We won't go there, but
Yeah.
where I was like, dude, that is not appropriate. And really high level people who really said some stupid, ignorant stuff, which also shed the light on me that, there's no reason to go in and be intimidated by the president of anything, There's a lot of people who they have gaps in their knowledge, and that's the bottom line. They may be smart in other ways, but I'm smarter than them in this issue. So there's no reason to go in and be all humble. Go in and be confident.
So you create this enduring weekly syndication business. It evolves over time. American Latino evolves into Urban Latino. Am I correct?
No, Urban Latino evolved in American Latino because we wanted to get it broader, not get confused. And also we had some partners who weren't pulling their weight. So we had to kind of rejigger things so that the people who were actually doing the work were doing it. But American Latino was the name
Right.
that really represented second and third generation Latinos, not urban. You don't have to be urban, but American encompassed Texas Latinos and New York Latinos and LA Latinos and Chicago. And as the Latino market was moving to less urban areas like Orlando or whatever, we wanted to represent that. So it was a strategic move to name it. And I remember, I think it was Hillary Clinton at one time was like, these American Latinos. And I was so excited because I felt like I had a part in that, because nobody wanted to call them American Latinos. They call them a million different things. But then I sold the company and I kind of took a break from all that. And then the whole American Latino, there was nobody there planting that flag and just pounding it home. And you got to have a cheerleader doing that. So they ended up with like Generation Z, or I don't know what they call them, like Latinx. Oh, Latinx, which is just, I was just like, what are you doing? So nobody, but now the world has changed and Latinos are much more represented because everybody is represented now. It's a different world now than back in the year 2000 when I launched it, in the year 2009 when I sold
It's a
it.
very different broadcast business, but you
Yeah.
re-enter the broadcast business with the lifestyle travel genre, Raw
Yes.
Travel, which is a reality-based show where you visit various ports of call, places you wouldn't think to travel. El Salvador, for example, right when who is our beloved leader, our friend.
Bukele. Yeah, Bukele, the dictator. I went there. Well, I went there not really for raw. I actually went to Central America and skipped El Salvador our first season. We filmed in Latin America our first season because I didn't know if we were going to make money and I needed to keep it, budgets low. So we just bust through
Right.
Central America. And El Salvador at the time was super dangerous, but I always got these emails after we premiered from El Salvadorians. Why didn't you go there? What do you got against El Salvador? And it had become much safer. So I went back and did a digital first thing after 10 years later, after I'd already stopped producing original episodes. And that's online right now. And it was just kind of experimental. And I kind of wanted to do something for El Salvadorians. But I also wanted to kind of like tell the story because when Raw Travel began, the idea behind Raw Travel was kind of naive, but in earnest, which was if we could just get Americans to use their passport and travel, they would have the same experience that I had, which is we're all the same. We have all these similarities. You can learn a lot from a different culture. If you have some authentic travel, you're going to be rewarded. It's going to make you a better human being. And the reason I call that naive is because now I think if someone's MAGA and they got a passport, they're probably sitting at the golf resort being that ugly American stereotype that you hear about. That has
Well,
been my experience.
it
Not
was
all.
funny. They asked Mark Wayne today and called it. He has this soliloquy that he told, I think Fox News or something. War is terrible. You can eat your nostrils. You can smell it. It's awful. And like Mark Wayne, have you ever been abroad other than family vacations? So, so I'll get to your progressive awakening, which unfolded over decades. I want to talk
Yeah.
about the business a little bit. So just quickly going back to American Latino, that was cleared in like 90% of the country. I mean, everybody had that show for the most part, correct?
Yeah, eventually we got there. When we first started, the reason I was able to make it successful is in the Hispanic market was so focused and concentrated in LA, New York, Miami, Chicago, Texas, that I think we launched with like 20 something affiliates, which was only maybe 60% of the United States, but was 90% of the Latino market. So
Right.
that was another reason an independent guy could do it. And Raw Travel was a different animal, which made that an even bigger challenge later on because I was doing the general market thing. And I was concerned, was that going to make it or not? Not
So
not
very
the least.
closely, your limited DMAs, the
Yeah,
scope is achievable. So let's
that's
talk
right.
about you come at the market. Do you leverage all those contacts you made? How do you get a lifestyle show syndicated, whatever year that was?
Yeah, that was 2013. And so, yeah, by then I'd had 10 years of doing American Latino. And I guess I had a lot more contacts, obviously, than I did when I first began American Latino. And I knew what a field order was. I knew what a clearance was. I knew what, all the jargon that you need, the things that I forget that other people don't know. But basically, I knew all that. I knew what needed to get done. But I have to be 100% honest with you. It was a passion project. It was something I just said, I made some money from the sale. I'd like to take this amount of money, try this thing, and if it doesn't work, what a cool thing to try because I was actually going to be on camera trying to do it myself, having this kind of blurry vision of what I wanted it to be. And then it took about a year and a half before it just honed in on what I really, before I could really tangibly say this is what Raw Travel is. And that's what was great about being independent. And so I think, again, we started in like 60% of the general market of the country. I certainly lost money in year one, something I couldn't have done with American Latino. I needed money right away
Right.
because I didn't have the resources. But this time I was able to finance my own thing, took a little bit of pressure off. But again, it wasn't easy, it was really hard and was even less staffed up than I was before because the business had changed dramatically. Because of the 2009 financial crisis, there had been a real change. So I've been through some changes. So I remember that. I was like, is this the right time to do this? And Anthony Bourdain was still on the air. Travel Channel was still doing travel content. It was a different world. It was beginning to change. And Raw Travel, I was just like, don't embarrass yourself. Just don't embarrass yourself. That was my goal. And it worked to my
Oh,
surprise.
I want to get into that.
No
You've
surprise in any.
intrepidly brought American television to some really interesting places. Ukraine, not the least of them, and you've done a lot of work over there, and
Yeah.
have gotten involved in a very positive way. And I definitely want to get to that, but I do want to
Yeah.
kind of cover the evolution of the distribution business, evolution of this a little bit, and I'm kind of moving it along to that point. You launched basically two shows over, or kind of big pillar shows for your business is over the course of 20 years, and describe the solution or de-evolution of the broadcast business over that span. It's healthier in 2022 or 2002 than it is now. I mean,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
you could summarize
Well,
that.
in a way, it was tougher because it was more crowded, right? And you had a higher, like just the production cost alone with American Latino. When we began, I had to finance an editing system with a guy named Lou out in Long Island because at some ridiculous interest rate. I don't think he was
How really
mafia
was his
related.
name, Lou?
Lou was his name. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember
tracks.
because I remember there was a balloon payment at the end and Lou was like, no, you got a balloon payment. And I'm like, what? And I was like, who's this Lou dude? And I'm like, I better pay him, but that was like a 40 grand investment. And that was
Yeah,
a lot of money for an editing system that now you can do on your laptop or your phone. So
right.
that's as the democratization of content occurred. So we were always there, like just as that was going down, we were going up. And just as the broadcast business was going down, I remember my last year of American Latino of going to NAPTP was right after the financial crisis. We
Oof.
were always getting these little 10 by 10 booths and getting treated like garbage by NAPTP and being shoved in the back where nobody could find us. And then in 2009, after I sold the company, we had a little money so we could buy a bigger booth. We were like we were the biggest booth at NAPTP because everybody had moved to the hotels, right? To the
Right.
suites. And so as the business declined, we went up. And I see that with the success of people like, I'm going to bring it up, Byron Allen. One of the reasons that he's been successful is because he's able to just stay on the air. Whereas Warner Brothers or Paramount or NBC or Sony, they're not going to deal with that. They have like, if they don't make $50 million, they're not happy. And so out of
I'll
a
just say Byron Allen through at least 20 covers of broadcasting and cable, media entrepreneur of the year, wonder entrepreneur, wherever, paid for this location that I stream from today. I like to think is my old company. Still publish,
oh,
well, they don't publish broadcast and cable, but they do the Hall of
yeah.
Fame awards around it. Dead publication, but they'll still.
If you got anything where Byron can win an award or be on the I mean, I think he's narcissistic and, but whenever, I don't know him personally, but I'm just saying from the business, but whenever a general manager be like, oh, you work hard, you're like Byron Allen. I'm like, I am not like Byron Allen. We produced one show and we did it as well as we could. And I
Right.
wanted to make it the best show I possibly could. Whereas he's doing 40 shows and they all look like crap and they're all, it's garbage shows. The other thing that was really important that I wanted to distinguish myself from people like him, because there were a lot of people in syndication, weekend syndication, who had bad reputations. And that's the reason I went independent, because I got involved with one of those people at the beginning of American Latino and they screwed me over.
Yeah.
And so when someone screws you over, you're like, well, I'm going to do this myself. And again, these are names that people know. I'm not going to name names, but just a bunch of scumbags who thought they could take advantage of somebody. And I see it when I talk to independent producers. They come my way and I warn them away from people like that. They're only in it for the money. They're just low rent people, man. And that was what syndication was. And I didn't want to do business like that. It's just not the way I was raised.
Well,
It's satisfying to me.
talking to you over the years, it does seem like on a station programming level, there was sort of a de-evolution of tastes. Things became a bit commoditized. There was the inability to like tell the difference between an auteur-driven show from somebody a passion project from one slapped together, paint by numbers. And you see it when you watch broadcasts at 11 o'clock, 12 in the morning. Some of that
That's
stuff's
right.
pretty bad.
Well, and a lot of people, I can't tell you the number of TV stations over the years, and this is part of the de-evolution of what you're talking about. Like a general manager doesn't even know he has a show on the air. I'll call him up and be like, hey, I'm coming to back when I used to make market calls. You run our show. And he's like, we do? Do we? And I'm like, yeah. Like, you don't even know what's on your, I just find that
That's demoralizing.
GMs are busy. I'm not all GMs, obviously. I know some really good GMs, They've been there for a long time and they run a tight ship. But I know some real sloppy ones that bounce around from market to market, have no idea what's on their schedule. And then program directors aren't really program directors anymore. Again, speaking generally, but again, it's just look at the show. Is it entertaining? Is it well produced? I mean, I'm hardly an arbiter of taste, but I'm like, look, I'm not going to be objective, but I feel weird telling you our show is head and shoulders above this one. But I'm like, look at the two shows. I'm offended that I'm being the lead out of this garbage show that loses the lead in every time. And then I have to rebuild from scratch because they're garbage. And in a way, I think, Dan, broadcasting didn't die. They killed themselves. They committed suicide.
Well, I mean, are you dealing with big station group executives at this point? Or are you still on the
Oh,
affiliate?
yeah. No, I've always dealt with station groups. You have to, and have a lot of good relationships there. But used to be a combination of local program directors and station groups. Now it's almost all exclusively station groups, of course. And, in their defense, people that used to run 10 stations are now running 150. How are you going to keep up with everything there? You can't.
Right.
No one can do their job that well. And the question I ask for owners, is it really worth saving, I don't know, $500,000 or $1 million a year in personnel costs? The profit margins are super high. They're getting paid all kinds of retransmission and all that stuff. I mean, the reality is, like I said, it's not dying, committing suicide. And slowly but surely, people who don't care about anything but getting a third or fourth or fifth vacation home are the only people that are left. And the people who, truly made a business out of it and cared about TV and loved it, it's just, they're just going away, myself included.
Although I worked in the group, I am not a broadcast expert, but I do wonder what's going through the head of the industry. They're broadly championing deregulation under Trump's FCC, or pushing for the removal of this ownership cap, or at least the two biggest companies are Nexstar and Sinclair, referring to the 39% reach cap, in order to, in the case of Nexstar, buy Tegna and create massive monolith of stations. And in the process, you've got Brendan Carr, the head of the SEC, threatening Comcast, NBC Universal, threatening ABC Disney with their licenses. Yeah. And on the backdrop of that, you've got high-profile equity analysts like Laura Martin saying to Disney, why are you even in the broadcast business? You can just put your content in streaming. What is the benefit of a highly consolidated industry where only a few people are getting rich and the major broadcaster networks step out? I mean, that seems like the next level of doom to me.
No, totally. I mean, it'll kill the business. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I mean, the business is kind of already dead. It's still a big business. I mean, I can tell when the show's on the air, we get a lot of emails and stuff. And New York alone, when the show airs, we're on a good time slot. I have a good relationship with Fox 5 and My 9 here in New York and in several markets. But in Seattle, there's just certain markets where we really pop. And basically, that's very satisfying to me. That's why I always wanted to focus on quality and not put out garbage, because people see me on the street and I don't want to be embarrassed. I want to be proud. I want more people to see it. But again, I think it's just the oligarchs positioning. If you look at Russia as a great example, there's no middle class there. There's a few oligarchs that run everything. Then there's, in Moscow, what counts as a middle class, and then everybody else is dirt poor. And it's just an embarrassment of a country. And that's what happens when a few people own everything. And Viktor Orban in Hungary, and it's all about the money. This concentration of wealth transcends every industry. The reason that it really is so important in the broadcasting industry is because, of course, if you use it like Brandon Carr is trying to do, which is he has a double standard. It's bias if they're not being flattering enough to the Trump administration. But say what you want about the Biden administration, it's just absurd. It's up against the First Amendment, but it's just they're using this. And a lot of it is not because of like, for example, Elon Musk bought Twitter. Well, he ran it into the ground. He hired Linda Yaccarino, who I met at one given time. And I was just always, what are you doing? Like, why are you there? They're like, free speech, free speech. No, it has nothing to do with any of that. He ran it into the ground, but he lost all kinds of money on the deal, but it wasn't about Twitter. It was about the power that Twitter had. Right. So that he could then have contracts with the government for SpaceX and whatever. So he could then be a bootlicker to Trump. And same thing with Rupert Murdoch and the New York Post. The New York Post has no advertising. It hasn't made money in 20 years, but it's an organ that serves a purpose for Rupert Murdoch for what he wants to do. And then Fox News can be sources said, and they can go to the New York Post,
Oh,
which, journalists' integrity. I used to be a frequent reader. I even read it when I lived in LA.
we have the
But
California Post that just launched. And
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
what
just,
what I love is crime here, homicides and gang crime are at historic lows, and it's pretty safe here. But if you read the California Post, MS-13 is combining with this gang and that gang, and they're forming
yeah,
a be afraid, always afraid, vote Republican.
yeah, oh, it is Fear News Channel. It's what I call them. Fear News Channel, Faux News Channel. I come up with all these sayings. I can't watch 3 minutes of Fox News because it's not that they're lying, which they are sometimes in their opinion programs. They're just straight up lying. But even in their news, by mixing it in with facts, that's a time honored. That's what Russia does with their disinformation campaigns. If you just tell it one big old lie, and the bigger the lie, the more successful it is, the more people believe it. And what is it? The lie travels around the world 20 times before the truth puts its shoes on or whatever. I mean, that is true. But by mixing it with truth, you just muddy the waters. And that's really what people are trying to do is just confuse people. It's really sad. I'm from the South. And all I do is see, I'm working out at the gym and I just see Fox News channel on. You can't even like get another channel on. Well, if they get CNN, now it'll be all of it. But it's just going to kill the business. People are going to go where they want to go. People who are discerners of truth, who can spot disinformation, who can spot biased content, they're going to find ways to get that content because they're the intelligent ones. The
Well, these
stupid people, or the people who are willfully ignorant, are always going to watch what they want to be told.
Well, I do think that media platforms that carry a lot of bomb tonnage, like CNN, like the erstwhile Twitter, do matter. I do think why sitting at home during the pandemic, the left was able to unseat a sitting president. It's not easy to do because you had Jeff Zucker with a vendetta against a monster he thought he created in Trump with The Apprentice, turning CNN into sort of a left-leaning 24-hour day bad things about Donald Trump network, which it was what it was. And you had Twitter, which was a free platform for journalists and tech and everything that's lean left. You take those two things and you turn them the other way. You turn the nozzle the other way. I don't know that, I have a friend in Arkansas who a few weeks ago gave his MAGA coming out that he believes in, America first and we shouldn't be in foreign wars and all this stuff. And it just complete disconnect. And I love the guy. Go back. He was my earliest friend, but he's not getting the latest information and he never will. I mean, there's no social media probably feeds everything that he ostensibly believes in. He's not getting it through cable news. There's no newspaper. So you come to realize that it's a messaging war that's maybe lost to some extent. So anyway, that's bleak.
Well, yeah, I don't, I don't think it's lost. I think it's, it's definitely tougher to get to the truth. But I think your friend in Arkansas is like, I have some relatives in Tennessee or some friends many friends in Tennessee. If they want the truth, they could get it. They don't want it. They want to
Yeah.
hear what they want to hear. They want to see what they want to see. They want something that reinforces their view of the world. And travel is the antithesis of that. And so that's why I love travel. And so I'm always surprised that people are surprised that I'm not a MAGA dude. I'm like, how could you think I would be MAGA, man? It is xenophobe. Xenophobia is the exact opposite of what travel does. Like, you think I'm going to get on the ICE bandwagon? You think I'm not going to speak up against ICE after I worked for a Latin television company? Like, I just can't believe that they would think that I'm that. And I'm like, what are you, nuts? I guess because I'm white and I'm of a certain age and I'm from the South. I'm
You're
supposed to think the
outspoken
same
on
way.
your socials as well,
What's
and you've
that?
been outspoken about Ukraine, which you've a place you've spent a lot of time at. Maybe you can briefly synopsize for your audience your initial connection, how it's flourished, and you've been there, I guess, umpteen times and shot a lot of
Yeah.
content and talked to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I went there was 2012 when I was living in California before Raw Travel was on the air. We'd shot some what I call backdoor pilots, but we hadn't gotten it on the air. Was trying to get it at the Travel Channel. I didn't want to syndicate it because I knew how hard that was at the time. So I took a month and traveled Eastern Europe, and Ukraine was one of the countries that I stopped in. And I had been to Russia 2 years before, and which was at the time I didn't realize how big of a deal that was because I met some people that I'm still friends with to this day who were exiled because of the war, musicians. And so all of it kind of just came together. So I went in 2012. I was like, oh, this is kind of like a poor man's Russia. It's very similar, Slavic, blah, blah, blah. Oligarchs, you can just feel the oligarchy there. And then I went again in 2019 after the Maidan Revolution and after Putin had taken over Crimea, and basically felt a completely 180-degree shift. And it was just people were fired up, young people, the energy was there. You could feel a country being formed.
Right.
And I just happened to go twice that year because Ukrainian Airlines, which hasn't flown since the full invasion, obviously, had a press tour and they invited me. And I was like, I was just there in August, but I was like, let me go again. And we went. I went to Lviv, and then I went to the thing in Chernobyl. So I just did this really intense period of Ukraine content for Raw Travel. Met a talented videographer who was a refugee from the Donbass, from the eastern part of Ukraine, from 2014. And she told me her story about her family. And I ended up hiring her because she was just so talented. We shot basically in Europe. Anytime I went to Europe, I would just fly her wherever we're going, and she would be my videographer. And the more I got to know Anastasia and her family and her boyfriend and his story and her little brother, I just learned about Ukraine and what was happening. So when the full invasion happened in 2022, the pandemic was over. I was traveling again. Anastasia had just met me in Lisbon,
That was a
Portugal.
campaign, if I recall, denazification of Ukraine.
Yeah, well, that just goes that information muddy in the waters. I mean, Russia is the king of propaganda, and whenever someone tries to luck,
It's such a mob move that he couldn't even bother to make a plausible reason for it. There's no thought out justification. It was, yeah, there's Nazis there. We're taking them out.
Yeah, I mean, it serves two purposes, and Trump does the same thing. He's using Viktor Orban's and Putin's playbook, the authoritarian playbook. You say something so ridiculous, but it gives your base, the people who are going to believe whatever they want to believe, something to believe. It muddies the water for the other folks, and then the intelligent folks, it demoralizes them because they can't believe anybody would believe that. And so it achieves a lot of those objectives. And the key is that third thing, demoralization. That's where we have to fight back, and we can't let it, because that's the only way that stuff wins. And Ukrainians know this because they've been dealing with Russia as a next door neighbor for obviously hundreds of years. And Russia has always tried to subjugate Ukraine, starve them, had the Holodomor. We won't get into all that history. But that's why Ukraine is such an amazing place, is because like other places that have been challenged, like Colombia, South America, all these places I've been to that have come through tragedy, they always have a really affirmative, creative spirit. And I felt that in Ukraine. So I really just connected with Ukraine. And then I had, of course, friends from Russia, musician friends who were anti-war, who had to get the hell out of Dodge, or they were going to get killed or go to prison.
Right.
And then there's an American guy that knows my Russian musician friend who's in exile, who is in prison.
Yeah, you sent that story to me. It was a Rolling Stone story that you turned me on to via social. That was just, I mean,
wild.
It's just a really tragic story of an American who sort of floundered here in the latter part of his life. Midlife, he finds a love interest and a career making music in Russia. Goes on. Who's going to Anthony Bourdain? What led to his demise? Maybe you could tell us a little.
It's on Anthony Bourdain's Russia episode, and Travis Leake is the guy's name if anybody wants to Google him, and Leake. And they took him hostage, and Travis maybe he should have gotten out and he didn't. But the fact that I know the guy, the fact that I was in Ukraine when he was arrested, I was filming My Summer in Ukraine, the documentary that I did about Ukraine. Yeah. And so all of this is just kind of mind blowing to me. And when I just got back from Italy and North Africa, I wasn't supposed to go to Italy. I was supposed to go to Egypt, but the Iran war got in the way. So now I went to Italy, and I'm there in Italy, and I'm at the gym in this suburb of Italy. I'm staying at an Airbnb, and I'm getting out of the dressing room, and there's this guy with this gnarly tattoo on his back, and I look, and it's Red Square. And I'm like, whoa, I can't tell you how the impact that has, because I've been to Ukraine. And then later I was doing a tour on a Vespa with a buddy of mine, a friend of a friend, took me around Rome on his Vespa. Yeah. And we go by the Russian embassy. And the first thing I see is a dude with a machine gun and camouflage and the Russian flag. And I can't tell you what that does to my heart. I mean, I was panicked. Right. I was like, let's get the hell out of here, dude. If they know who I am, I'm screwed. And when I saw that guy with the gnarly tattoo, the first thought that comes to mind is they know I'm here. They're coming to get me. because I made that documentary about Ukraine because I get threats like that online. And it's just so real, dude. I've been worked by agents. I am constantly approached by people online that are not legit. And it's wild to me. It's like a spy mystery. And it's super real for
So
me,
within
all of it.
The Putin government, there are files on you. They know who you
I
are.
don't know about that. I don't know. But I think like if I was an easy kill, they'd kill me. Or if
Yeah.
I was an easy target to take, I mean, if they take Travis Leak, he didn't make a documentary about Ukraine. He didn't do anything. He was praising the Russian government and they took him anyway. They don't care, man. And I've read a lot of books about Russia. I've done my homework on this geopolitical situation. And there's a great line. It says, "You may not care about Russia, but Russia cares about you, no matter who you are. They care about you. The smallest MAGA person sitting online, they've targeted. They got you, man. They've sent you disinformation. We've all been influenced. They are on an industrial scale."
Everything that MAGA has done has benefited from them. You have to
Yeah.
wonder. The Manchurian candidate thing, everybody like, well, we have too many conspiracy theories. But it tracks. So what is your outlook for Ukraine having so much immersed yourself in it? Do you believe that the non-US international community will rescue them? Will they rescue themselves? What happens from here?
Well, I got to tell you, ever since Trump has been elected, attacks on civilians have increased, and obviously the support from the United States has decreased. Yet seems to be an inverse reaction of people donating to Ukraine. The people that, I mean, and the overwhelming majority of Americans still support Ukraine. That's what's wild about it. The people that are even Republicans, right?
Right.
And it should be bipartisan. It should be like climate change. Some things just shouldn't be partisan, but they always make this stuff partisan, right? And there are some Ukrainians that I took issue with for being MAGA. I was in Ukraine in 2024, the summer of 2024. I go every summer. And this is after I did the documentary. So I wasn't filming, but I was talking to
Yeah.
another American guy in English. And this Ukrainian guy, I'm assuming he looked like Ukrainian, middle aged man, is wearing a heavy, not a light windbreaker on a hot summer day. And I'm like, why is he wearing that? You know, I'm just thinking these things. And he comes up as close to us as he can get, undoes his windbreaker and just does his shirt Superman style. And it's like, Trump will be back in 2024. And I wanted to kill him, but the buddy I'm talking to didn't even notice it. And I'm just like, how stupid can you be? And when I see stupid people like that, I'm like, you don't deserve democracy. Putin can take, but the bottom line is that's like 5% of Ukrainians. But when I run into that 5%, I'm still apoplectic because it's so stupid. But all of it is stupid. It's stupid for Americans to support Trump. There's nothing that's making us great. We're
Well, I want
weaker than ever.
to tie this back to the American business community because there was a brief moment on November 6th, 2024, where everybody said, well, it'll be easier. M&A will be easier. We can use some deregulation. I thought that was, business runs on certainty and stability, and
Right.
you just wrought chaos. Just you watch. I think it surprised everybody how fast and how dramatic it has turned out.
Well, there's no consequences. And I can tell you as a business person, I don't want to live in this apartment anymore. I want to move, but I'm loath to buy a place with the
Right.
United States in the situation that's in because I want to be mobile. I don't want to just buy a place and then not be able to leave. I wouldn't launch a business for anything right now in the United States. I can't believe tourists still come here. They're idiots. What are you doing? Get out of here. Go somewhere else. Go to Canada. It's stupid.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense with everything that's happening. But some people are just in their bubble. They're not going to do anything. And that's cool. They're going to lose their democracy while they're asleep on their feet. They don't deserve democracy, but I don't want them to drag me down. So I'm going to do everything I can to fight for it. Just to talk a little bit about Ukraine, it has obviously, I'm very passionate about this, but it has opened my eyes as to what is happening across the world. It's not just in the United States. It's not just in Russia. It's in Hungary. It's in Slovakia, Georgia. I've been to Georgia 3 times. I've seen Russian occupied Georgia. It's essentially under Russian control right now, but the people do not want that government. We're having
I support Ukraine that has won some awards. You've done other work there. Where would somebody find to date your library of production?
If you go to our YouTube channel, Raw Travel TV, you'll see a ton of content, but you'll see I have a Raw Travel Ukraine channel. You can go to rawtravelukraine.com. It's dedicated to advocacy for Ukraine. to educate, show people how they can help. It's not just monetarily, and it needs updating. I'm falling behind on that, but it's a ton of work just advocating for Ukraine. You can go to our YouTube channel. You can go to rawtravel.tv and see some of our library. I'm still trying to figure out an OTT or a fast channel deal. We didn't really delve into it, damn, but I've had a few kind of wild west moments
Oh,
where it reminds me of the early days of me trying to get into syndication, where it's just a bunch of charlatans and people making false promises and nobody's really being transparent. And you're going to make 70 grand a year off this content and you end up making 200 and it costs you 3
well,
grand to get that
without
content to them.
naming specific names, you got in business with somebody who ended up defrauding a lot of people and going belly up. So I think,
Yeah, I got mine. I always get mine. Like, I'm a relentless, and I feel very thankful and grateful. I
yeah,
got mine because they were so sloppy. They put it on another channel without my permission, and I kind of became a trump for a moment. I was like, I may have to sue here, that kind of thing. And
right.
being a small business owner just means you got to know how to fight. And I fought a lot of battles, not just in my business, but just anytime some financial planner tried to rip off my uncle, man, I get fired up, man. I'm ready to go.
And you got to know, but sometimes your soul just needs some chicken soup, and you need to, restart the litigation. So let's talk about the explosive fast business. I actually had a good interactions last week. I delved into sports content on fast, and it
Yeah,
feels like it's a little difficult because the primary revenue engine has been programmatic,
yeah.
which kind of values everything. It's sports, whether it's live sports or bowling from 20 years ago. And some of the operators I talked to are innovative and making deals with larger media sales companies to sell their ads and making a go of it. So it does seem like for the first time, it's more than 6% of television viewing now. It does feel like there might actually be some money there eventually or now.
I think there's money there. The problem is there's just so much content. So if you just I have a 200 episode library that is mostly evergreen. There's a few things that I would have to adjust. I'm anxious to exploit that off of broadcast TV because we're still rerunning on broadcast TV. So if you go to rawtravel.tv, you can see where we run.
Right.
Still, our library is rerunning and doing good in the numbers. I want it to run on fast. I want it to run on another channel. But if you just throw it up there, no one's going to find it. It has to be marketed. And so there's a lot of bad travel content on YouTube, but it's about the algorithms and clickbait. And I just don't want to do that. I just don't want to do it. It feels dishonest. But I was told that vertical content, vertical meaning that you watch it this way instead of this way, which is where you would watch a
Yeah.
TV show. Well, our content is this. And I could probably get some software and make it like this, but it's going to take a minute. So I just got back from North Africa. And again, I went to Italy and I am filming vertical content, raw travel vertical. And one of the reasons I felt compelled to do that is because I started a TikTok channel a little over a year ago. And I got to tell you, it takes off.
Right.
Every time I go to a location and I'm getting it, I'm understanding it. It's not clickbait. It's just like I got locked in a bathroom. I ate a Moroccan hot dog, which looks like a pastry. It's not rocket science, but it's little things that I would normally throw into raw travel, the TV version that differentiated it from your average travel show that would be like, well, that's behind the scenes stuff. That shouldn't go in the show. I'm like, no, I want that in the show because it humanizes what the show is and who I am. And that is, I'm not a travel expert. I'm a travel enthusiast.
Right.
And when you travel, you should expect that things are going to go wrong. And what I was trying to convince my audience to do is to go get outside the tourism zone. Don't do the bus tour. Don't do the big cruise. I mean, you can if you want, but man, you're missing the best things in life by not going out there outside the tourism zone because instead of being nasty and resentful or looking at you like a human ATM, if you get outside the tourism zone, you're going to feel like, oh, where are you from? Oh my God, you're American. And I'm really concerned about that. I hope that continues because I was in a predominantly Muslim country in Morocco and Tunisia during Ramadan when the Iran war happened. I
Oof.
was super concerned the first couple of days, but
Yeah.
no negativity at all. None at all. I mean, there's Sunnis. I think Iran is Shiites. I don't know what goes on there. I'm not well versed on that. But at the end of the day, I never felt nothing but love from people. But that's been my experience in Muslim countries everywhere I've gone.
Well, you kill 175 schoolgirls, and that thing echoes over time.
It
Uh,
does, and it's not cool, and I'm not cool with it. I don't care what age or geography. I don't care if they're in Palestine or Israel. I don't care where the child is. That should never happen. And I've been railing about that in Ukraine, as Russia has just indiscriminately killed civilians, kidnapped 20,000 children, committing so many war crimes. And in a way, when we did that, and then when Trump said, oh, I think it was them, and he's gaslighting like Putin does, I'm like, well, he's doing this on purpose. He's bringing us down to their level, which is exactly what Russia wants. That way, there's nobody at the moral high ground, nobody to say that's wrong. We're going to prosecute you on that. And that's where Ukraine is so important, because they are that hope. And to me, they have a healthier democracy than the United States right now, by far. Free
So
press, speech, everything.
this orientation on the political scale, left leaning, it's made you very
Yeah.
popular, I guess, in the very progressive local broadcast industry. A lot of people have rallied behind you and shown their support on social and embraced your content.
But I look at broadcast TV as conservative. I can't tell you how many GMs.
I've heard some of your
Yeah.
stories. We're not going to call anybody out, but a few folks have taken you down on the socials and threatened your.
Well, I have a GM who, a general manager of a TV station in a major market, who's majorly MAGA, not the smartest tool in the shed. Didn't know where Chile was, the country, that big, long, skinny country down in South America, one of the easiest country. And I know this because I was talking to him about when we were having civil conversations about climate change and the ozone layer, which was fixed. Anyway, he proceeded to call all my followers morons and idiots, and finally I had to block the guy. Well, he decided not to renew my show, not surprisingly, pretending for a business reason. But I got a replacement. But that's one instance. Another instance was when I was in Ukraine this last summer on the way back after probably one of the worst bombing, most terrifying nights I'd ever had. I've had a few terrifying nights in Ukraine, but one of the most terrifying. So I was not in the mood to be pushed around or lectured by somebody who's never been to Ukraine, doesn't know anything about it, couldn't spot it on a map. Trump invited Putin to Alaska for the red carpet meeting. And I just said, that's not cool with me. I'm embarrassed and ashamed. Why are we rolling out the red carpet for a war criminal, a child murderer? And somebody from corporate media got on my Facebook page and said, well, I'm never clearing that show. And bottom line is, I knew his boss, I knew the president of his company. And when the guy found out that I knew all these people and that I was like, you're going to tell me you're going to try to censor me? Well, great. Because I know people like Dan Frankel at Next TMT who would love this story.
Powerful Next TMT.
Do what you got to do. I didn't name your name. I just said I know a lot of people in there, and I do. And he's like, oh my God, I have been hacked. I'm so sorry.
I love that.
Amazing. He just discovered he was hacked right when I told him I knew all his bosses and everything. And that just goes to tell you the cowardice of what we're dealing with. I let the dude off the hook because I don't want the emotion. I've been there on social media where maybe you said something that's like you shouldn't have said it. He stuck to it until he found you can't bully me. You can't bully me.
Well, I mean, you're kind of a Cassandra. I mean, a few bombs are falling outside. You can't sleep? Come on.
Well, I mean, that's what's great about being small, though, right? Independent.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not married. I live very humbly. I have enough money, I think, to get to the end of the road and still have some left over for some good causes if I decide, unless I live to be 100, and I don't think I will. So I think, like, I don't have as much to lose as these corporate companies. And so I'm going to be using that superpower, if you will, to say what I want to say. And it doesn't give me a license to be nasty to people or to be inappropriate. I'm not. But to speak truth to power is always something that I feel like would suffocate me if I couldn't do it. And I've been to countries, including Morocco, where they couldn't do it. And everybody in Morocco was like, oh, we love Trump. And they were looking at me like, do you like Trump? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, we have to love Trump because our king loves Trump. And I was like, are they messing with me? Are they being serious? Are they trying to message me that they really don't like Trump, but because of, and they couldn't say anything disrespectful about the king. I don't want to live in a society like that. And I won't.
Business leaders like Tim Cook, I would wager money, and I think I'd be pretty safe to say that a lot of the interaction he's had with the president has been distasteful for him. It's not something he wants to do. He doesn't want to placate to him, but it's not his company. He has a very well-defined responsibility to other people, specifically shareholders. So you can't get too personally judgmental about it, but it's just an awful situation.
It really is. The CEO of United Airlines, though, was gladly on the Trump bandwagon. Well, guess what? I'm not flying United. I tore up my United frequent flyer card that I had used in my business, and I'm Delta all the way now. and I call them MAGA Airlines online all the time. I'm like, oh, why would anybody want to fly MAGA Airlines? And it's not hard to get mad at an airline because their customer service is terrible.
Yeah.
But the reason, what I forgot his name, you know his name, but anyway, the United CEO was all in, and all the airline, because they deregulated. So now the customers have no rights. And what I don't understand is why somebody would vote for someone who actively, and at this point, it's not about that. They're just not, they're just like, I'm not going to vote for a Democrat. And by the way, I don't think I'm a left. I think I'm whatever I am. You can't put me in a box, man. I'm just like, I don't even know. I didn't know the difference between left and right until Trump got elected. Yeah, I really, and people started calling me a commie.
You called me the Barry Goldwater right 70 years ago, 60 years ago.
I might have been.
I'm like, I have a duplex here in Los Angeles, and I have tenants, and I'm, landlord rights. So I want cheap goods at Walmart and cheap gas and all these things.
I'm a capitalist. I'm a business owner. I used to tell my people that I was like, hey, what do I look like? I'm like this. When you work for me, it's like I'm Fidel Castro. You're Cuba. You're in Cuba. The difference is you can leave. You don't have to get on a boat. I'm like, but you got to do what I say. So I'm like hardcore like that when I'm running my business. But it doesn't make me a right wing. I mean, I love people, man.
Which reminds me, I have some of your OSHA complaints here. No, I kid. So this is good. This is
talking about so much more cyber stalkers
of free content. And I've been told by other people in the space, ads just distract readers and they cheapen the content. And like, you know what? You have a trust fund because, we all need to fund these enterprises. And the fact that we're doing them ourselves is because other people have not been good at figuring that out.
Not a science, my friend. And I'm sure at some point you'll get to like I was, where I'm like, yeah, I could do like Byron Allen. I could just expand more shows and blah, blah, blah. But then that's not what I wanted to do. I'm making enough. I made enough. I made more than enough, more than I ever thought I would, more than my electrician dad, banker mom ever made.
Do the Byron Allen episode. And I got him as a reader. I don't know if he's actually opening, but I saw him on the roster. I would go through the numbers every once in a while, and I saw it open for Byron Allen. I'm like, I've made it. Syndication's coming. The next Sally Jesse Raphael or Phil or whatever.
Who knows, man? He may call me after seeing this and want to buy Raw Travel, and I might be his biggest fan. But I try to be consistent, man, and that's what I think people are not doing these days. They're not consistent to their values. Their values are whatever. It's called false consensus. And Russia is really good at building false consensus. And it's basically, they recognize that people don't know what their values are. And so it's cool to be an asshole now. Excuse my language. You have to bleep that out. But if it's cool to be an asshole now, I'm going to be an asshole.
Fortunately, we're not regulated by the FCC. With good. That, like I said, there are plenty of other things to discuss, but at the hour-long mark, I think first viewer, we need to sort of consider the time element here. So,
I'm sure we lost him a long time ago.
Yeah, somebody stuck it out somewhere. So this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on, Rob. Thanks for being such a friend to the business of the show. This is Daniel Frankel, co-founder of Next TMT. On behalf of Next TMT Talks, pound, whatever. We'll see you next time. Thanks.